My name is Truett Adair, and I'm here today to tell you about an exciting work that God is doing in the country of Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia, a former communist country located right in the heart of Eastern Europe, is an exciting place for God right now, and God is opening doors in Czechoslovakia that no one would have believed just a few short months ago. There is a great harvest field available to God's people right now in the country of Czechoslovakia. The fields of labor there are white unto harvest, ripe for harvest, and there's so many opportunities. I want to take just a few minutes of your time to tell you about a couple of those opportunities and a couple of ways that you can help in the work that God is doing in that country. The winds of change have been blowing through Eastern Europe, and everyone is aware of the changes. Right now, every place you go in Eastern Europe, the children flash the victory sign. The victory sign is a sign of the revolution. These are Romanian children. Bob Hare is standing there in the middle of those children. Bob and I were together on this tour through Eastern Europe, in Romania, and in Czechoslovakia. And as we passed by these children and as they gathered around, they gave us that victory sign, a sign that they're now free. Communism is almost a thing of the past in these countries now, and the people are free. We loaded up the trunk of a rented car with Bibles and with tracts, put our suitcases into the back seat of that little Volkswagen Rabbit, and we started out from Vienna, Austria, and headed for the border town of Bratislava, Czechoslovakia. For Bob Hare, Bob is a long-time missionary in Western and Eastern Europe, and he's been through this border many times. And there are many, many times at this border crossing that Bob and other missionaries have been harassed and searched and turned back and detained for hours upon hours of interrogation as they tried to get a few Bibles through the border to others in Czechoslovakia that desperately needed the Word of God. But as we went through this border crossing, we were welcomed. No one asked for papers other than our American passports. Right now, as you go through the border of Czechoslovakia, if you're an American, you don't even have to have a visa. You just show your passport and you go on through. But as we were about to go through the border, there were several things that we noticed that had changed. You no longer see the huge steel barricades. You no longer see the barbed wire fences. You no longer see the mine fields where many people have given their lives for the cause of freedom. They're all gone. There is an occasional watchtower, formerly the home of armed guards with machine guns, but now they stand as silent sentinels, telling us of an era gone by when communism was in control in those countries. You simply don't see those things anymore. Now the border crossings are free and easy and relaxed. We had the privilege of giving a Bible to a Czechoslovakian border guard. He was delighted to have the Bible. We asked him if he would mind if we took a picture. He said he wouldn't mind at all. And there in plain sight of other border guards, in plain sight of the whole world, we took a picture of a Czechoslovakian border guard being given a Bible by an old Bible smuggler, Bob Hare. Significant, isn't it? The changes that have been made. Just a few months ago, this man would have been required to arrest us, to detain us, to take the Bible away from us, and now we put it into his hand and he smiles and says, "Thank you." While we were in the city of Bratislava, we had the opportunity to put up posters advertising correspondence courses out of the city of Vienna. We put those posters up in broad daylight, in plain sight of everyone as they passed by. no one seemed to care. No one said we couldn't do it. A policeman was standing on the corner in front of the philosophy building of the University of Bratislava. We asked if it would be all right if we go in and put some posters up inside the university building. He shrugged his shoulders and said he couldn't see any harm in it. We went inside and no one stopped us. No one questioned us as we put posters advertising for Bible correspondence courses on every bulletin board we could find in that university building. There are some people throughout the country that over the years have been baptized into Christ, contacted in various settings. Joseph Koch, a number of years ago, came to the United States and stayed with his sister in Nashville, Tennessee. And while he was there, he and his wife were converted to Christ and baptized into Christ. They live in Bratislava, Czechoslovakia. And even though they are now Christians, even though they've been baptized, there's no congregation of the Lord's church in that city with which they might worship. This fine couple, Joseph and Anna Koch, had a problem a number of years ago, and that's what prompted them to go to the United States. Their son, František, was ready to enter high school, but because they refused to become a part of the Communist Party, he was not allowed to enter high school tuition free as other children in the country can. So they had to go to the United States, leaving František with relatives in Czechoslovakia, and work for over a year, almost night and day, in order to earn the money to put František in high school. The city of Bratislava is the second largest city in Czechoslovakia. 550,000 souls inhabit this city. It's a beautiful city in many, many ways. There's a large building that you can see right in the heart of that picture. It's about a 24, 25-story building. It houses all of the newspaper offices in the city of Bratislava. We visited that building, and while we were there, we were determined that we were going to try to place an ad in one of the newspapers in that country. Our plan was, if we could just place an ad and get a few hundred respondents to that ad who would study the Bible with us, then perhaps we would have some contacts in that city so that we might study with them for a year or two, and hopefully they would be some people some missionaries that we hope to send to Bratislava could contact in later times. As we went through that building, checking with newspapers, some of which were disinterested in our plan to place an ad for Bible correspondence courses, we met this lady, Marika Hadjasi, assistant editor of the Slovenski Denik, the Slavic Daily, a newspaper that has about 130,000 circulation in the city of Bratislava and other places in the country of Czechoslovakia. We explained to her that we wanted to help the people of Czechoslovakia learn English by studying the Word of God. And in studying the Word of God, we wanted to help them come to the point that they knew about the church that Jesus built. She began to ask us questions about the church. In fact, she said, I'd like to do an interview with you about the Church of Christ, of which you're a part. We sat there for a good while and told her about the church. We told about the great outpouring of love of the Christians in a few years ago in the work in Poland, and how we had helped to provide food for people in Poland when there was a crisis in that country. And we told about Romania and how we're carrying caravans of food into Romania several times a year to help the people there that are hungry. And we talked about the fact that in Romania we're giving away thousands upon thousands of Bible to to Bible-starved people in that country. She was so impressed with the idea and with the thought of possibly making the Bible available to people in Czechoslovakia and making Bible courses available in Czechoslovakia that she agreed to run a small ad for us absolutely free of charge. We left the country of Czechoslovakia not ever knowing whether or not that ad had run, but we had high hopes that we could get a few people to respond to the ad. We knew about the receptivity in other places. In Romania, for instance, where this picture was taken, Christians had placed ads in newspapers there, and an overwhelming response had been received, a response that was so great that we needed to take 5,000 Bibles into the country, and in the city of Sibiu, we distributed 5,000 Bibles. We advertised in the paper that we would be at the newspaper office at 10 o'clock the next morning. By 7 o'clock, a long line of people lined the sidewalk waiting for an opportunity to get a copy of the Word of God. We stacked those Bibles up and we gave them away all day long, every day, and great crowds of people gathered to receive their Bible. So we had seen the results of that. Bill McDonough, with Partners in Progress and the church at 6th and Izard in Little Rock, Arkansas, had placed an ad in a newspaper there and then received an overwhelming response. Over 24,000 have now responded since about February or March to an ad in the Romanian paper, and we had carried with us in our luggage 4,000 correspondence courses that had been graded by American Christians and were being sent to Romania. And in Romania, we got together in a hotel room one night and licked stamps and put those stamps on 4,000 letters, and the next day we hunted down little mailboxes like this, and we stuffed 4,000 letters into little bitty mailboxes around the city of Cluj, Romania. We hoped that we would have a similar response in Czechoslovakia. We knew that the people in Czechoslovakia, like the people in Romania, were starved for the Word of God. The Bible has been contraband in Czechoslovakia for many, many years. The older sister in this picture, Sister Rosa Marakova, is the widow of a man, Brother Marek, that was converted years ago in Czechoslovakia, and he had the opportunity of storing in his little two-room house over 10,000 Bibles that had been printed at that time on the Pravda press. That in itself is a story in the workings of the providence of God. But having been able to get those Bibles printed and get them out of the way of the Russian, the communist leaders that were trying to confiscate them, Bob Hare and other missionaries were able to get them hidden away in this little two-room house. And through the years, those Bibles were distributed, and other Bibles that were smuggled into the country were distributed, but it was only a drop in the bucket. There were so many people that needed Bibles and so many that wanted Bibles, and Bibles were simply not available to them. And even today, there's a dearth of the Word of God in Czechoslovakia. So many changes have taken place in the lives and in the receptiveness of people. The man in this picture used to be a communist. And during the time that missionaries were trying to come into the country on a temporary basis and preach to people, this man was their adversary. His mother-in-law was a Christian. And when missionaries would come and try to visit with her, he would threaten to turn them over to the secret police. He would forbid them to come to his house. He would forbid his wife and his mother-in-law to have a Bible in his home. When Bob Hare and I visited this family, we didn't know how we would be received. We hoped that the times had changed and that he had changed with the times, and sure enough, he had. He and his wife welcomed us into their home warmly, served us a meal. We talked about the Word of God with them. We gave them a Bible. And he told us that he'd love to learn English so that he could study the Bible even in English. More and more people in Czechoslovakia want to learn English. More and more people want to study the Word of God. Most of the people in Czechoslovakia live in huge apartment buildings like the one you see in front of you there. People are packed into these apartment buildings, and so many of them want to know the Word of God. We hoped through this ad that we put in the newspaper over there to reach some of the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that live in apartment buildings like this, people that we might not be able to reach any other way than through some kind of correspondence course. We visited with people that had been sympathetic to the cause of Christianity through the years, people like Dr. Dvorak, who has entertained on many occasions missionaries that have made short sorties into the country to preach and teach. We gave him a Bible. He was so glad to receive it, and he said to us before we left, if you will send missionaries here, if you will send someone here to help establish the church, I'll be glad to help. We traveled from Bratislava to the little village of Bilevec up near the Polish border. And at Bilevec we saw evidence of religious interest in Czechoslovakia in times past. This church building has the date on its spire, 1657. For many, many centuries, people in Czechoslovakia have shown an interest in religion. Communism has helped to stamp out some of that interest in some people. But boiling under the surface was a desire for the Word of God all along, even though it might have been illegal for Christians to meet. There were many, many people in this country hungry for God, hungry for the Word of God, who wanted to know about the truth. And there were some people scattered around the country in isolated places that had been baptized into Christ. People like Brother Albert in the yellow shirt and his family. Brother Albert and his wife were Christians. But we began to notice as we visited more and more of these families that had been baptized years ago, we noticed that their children were not members of the church, and their children knew very little about the Bible. Brother Albert's son, Wolfgang Albert, is not a Christian. Wolfgang's wife is not a Christian. The children don't know much about the Bible. We asked why, and we were told that it's against the law to teach religion, or was, during the communist era, against the law to teach religion to children. And in order for parents to teach religion to their children, both parents had to sign a document authorizing that religion could be taught to their children. And obviously, if parents signed that document with the communist government, then they would be put on a list of people that would be persecuted, denied privileges, and perhaps even jailed. So very few people were willing to sign that document. And children in school were encouraged to tell their teachers if their parents taught them religion. So in many, many quarters of Czechoslovakia, Christianity was one generational. We reached a few people in isolated places, but we were not able to establish the church firmly in Czechoslovakia because the communist regime kept us out and kept them oppressed. But now a freer time has come to the country. Changes are taking place. Back a few years ago, Frau Barova's husband was the owner of a huge lumber mill The lumber mill was taken away from him by the communist government, and he was put to work in a machine shop, and she was put to work in a factory. Now, after many years, Brother Barr has died. His widow and her son remain. And one of these days, they may get their business back. But I know one thing, now they can practice their religion freely. They can have Bibles and they can talk about God. And now, for the first time, this mother can freely tell her son about God without fearing what the communist government will do. One of the oldest, most faithful converts in Czechoslovakia was sick and in the hospital when we came to this village, but his two granddaughters were there to meet him. Brother Kubanek was getting on up in years, unable to go out and do any work for the Lord. His two granddaughters have enrolled in Bible correspondence courses, and they want to study the Word of God now. There's a new generation in Czechoslovakia that wants the Word of God, that want to be Christians, that want to be members of the church. And it's that generation that we're trying to reach now. Let me just tell you briefly about the shortage of Bibles in Czechoslovakia. Every place we went, in every town, and we traveled over 2,000 kilometers through the city, or through the country, in various cities. Every place we went, we asked in bookstores, and we asked people on the street, can you find Bibles here? Can you buy a Bible? And we were constantly told no. We visited with a family in Brno, Czechoslovakia. I had an opportunity to baptize into Christ this woman's cousin in Phoenix, Arizona. And she came to visit us in the hotel in Brno, Czechoslovakia. We asked them, can you buy Bibles in Czechoslovakia? And they said, oh no, you can't buy Bibles here. In fact, Bibles are even in short supply in the churches. These people are members of a Catholic church in Brno. And this family reported that this Catholic church had requested from headquarters 200 Bibles that might be distributed to their members. They were sent only 20 Bibles. They held a lottery, and people bought tickets to the lottery to see who might have the privilege then of paying over $30 each for one of those 20 Bibles available. Bibles are in short supply. So we knew that if we placed an ad in the newspaper for Bible correspondence courses, particularly in the English language, we would need to provide a Bible along with the course. And so we did that, not knowing whether or not we would actually receive very many responses. Boy, were we mistaken. About 2 weeks after I came back from Czechoslovakia, the responses began to pour in. 300 a day for a few days, then 500 or 600 a day, then 800 a day. One day we received 1,700 letters in one day. The next day, 1,500. A few days later, we received over 2,000 courses in one day. And at this moment, we have over 10,000 requests for Bibles and Bible correspondence courses in the country of Czechoslovakia, and that's only the beginning. They're still coming in at the rate of several hundred per day. These are people who answered an ad in the English language. These are people, most of whom know English well enough to study the Bible with us in English. And since we do not have in our brotherhood at the moment someone who can go over there as a missionary right now and speak the Czech or the Slovak language and study with people in their own language, we must identify people who can speak with us in English. Now we have an opportunity to provide Bibles, to provide Bible studies, and we need several things. And I hope you'll consider providing some of these needs. Number one, we need help grading and answering these correspondence courses. It's going to take a lot of people to respond with 10,000, and if it grows to 20,000 plus people who are requesting correspondence courses. It's also going to take a lot of money. We estimate that it will require about $5 per person to buy a Bible, to buy the courses, and to send those courses to Czechoslovakia. That's a lot of money, but it's a bargain. The people in Czechoslovakia are hungry for the gospel. There's a second thing that you can do. You can send your preacher or some preacher that's willing to go on a short-term trip, perhaps 6 weeks to 2 months, to work in a Bible study center in Bratislava, Czechoslovakia, and teach on a personal basis some of these thousands of people that are asking for help in learning English and in studying the Bible and understanding the Lord's will for their lives. There's a third thing you might do. Very soon we'll be putting together a team of missionaries that hope to go to that field and work and live full time. Perhaps your congregation, or perhaps you as an individual, might be able to help them to go in their monthly support or in their travel fund. There's so much that needs to be done, and so few people to do it. I just hope that you'll pray with me that now that God has opened the door in Czechoslovakia, we'll be willing and able to walk through that door. Thank you for your patience and for your help.